Okay, Parisi gang gang. So this is per Josh's request, kind of just talking about evaluations, interpretation, and kind of what like how we do it. And Josh, I don't. Hopefully, this is kind of what you had in mind, but I wanted to show you guys. I've got two eval reports here, two pretty different athletes. I don't say very different athletes, but I'll say two eval reports of athletes that represent 85% of the athletes that come into our facility. Okay, when we talk about young developing athletes. And I think that regardless of the age may skew the numbers and the results, but the way we interpret this and the tests that we run are actually the same. So the Parisi evaluation is what we're seeing right here. This is the standard baseline. So athlete comes in, new athlete, day one, they're going through an initial evaluation. That evaluation consists of a couple different things, but it really is three big reasons why we do it. Number one, we want them to come in and see our facility. For example, Kayla Cisse is the athlete on the screen right here. She's 10. You know, like for a 10-year-old girl, 10-year-old boy to come into our facility, it's red, there's turf, it's loud, there's people lifting, there's like muscular people walking around. Like we want them to get used to the facility, see the facility in a very comfortable, private way. So they come in, this is a one-on-one evaluation right now. Post reopening, we're doing everything one-on-one for our new athletes coming into the facility. We would do them two-on-one if really needed, but we're basically booking everything one-on-one right now for our new athletes to start in the program. So one, she's coming in, she's going to see where the facility is. Mom, dad are going to see where they're bringing their kid. Two, we're going to teach them our warm-up. The reason we start with really saying, hey, we're going to have you learn the warm-up and dial it in is because the next step for them is to come in and try a class. She's 10. The evaluation is not the training. The evaluation is more for us to know who's coming into our training, but it's not really for her to make a decision on if she likes the program or not. Yes, she'll probably have an initial inkling if she likes the program or not, but really we're just trying to get her into our program and kind of just see what we're working with, what athlete we're working with. We view this is a sidebar here, we view this evaluation almost as a standalone product that we offer. We will have athletes that come in and do an evaluation with us and then ask for some type of supplemental or remote programming, to which we'll sell programming, whether that's through Excel, paper format, or most of our programming now is done through Train Heroic delivery remotely. So one, see the facility. Two, learn our warm-up. And then three, we obviously want to establish baseline day zero metrics, just raw numbers. I use the analogy, it's not a very good analogy, but it's like when you go to the doctors, they take your height, your weight, your blood pressure. But for an athlete in a speed school, we're measuring how fast you run, how high you jump, how far you run, and then make some notes on what you look like doing it. So that's kind of the big three reasons why we do the evaluation for us personally in our facility. I don't want to speak for all Parisis, but it's a big piece for us to onboard new athletes effectively, and we have an extremely high close rate. I will say it's a slower sales process because, for example, Kayla came in on the 21st. Today's the 23rd. She's doing her demo session tomorrow. So there is this 4-day period where, you know, like we book the next step and we don't charge for that step, but we have an extremely high conversion rate because I view it as when you work with kids, we're building trust. We're building trust, and if we can give them our time, that's huge. So she comes in, mom, Jen, daughter, Kayla, they come in, they do the evaluation. Awesome. Next step is for you to come in and try a class. Great. Tomorrow, being Friday, the day she's coming in, will be when we look to close that sale and have her make a buying decision. And we've really set that up too. I'm not going to make this about sales and things like that. We can totally talk about that on a separate time, but we let her know, hey, you know, like come and take the class on Friday. Here's everything you need to know about our program. And then we can take the next steps at that point. So she knows exactly class ends or she's coming in. She may even buy before the class starts based off conversations she's had at home. But I'm not a pressure sales guy. If Kayla doesn't want to do the program, we don't really want her. And if mom doesn't feel comfortable having her come to the program, then that's great feedback for us and we need to be better. But we don't make a business on kids that don't want to do the program. And we don't make a business on parents that don't feel comfortable with their kids coming in. So it's a little slower sales process, but it's okay. We have extremely high retention and extremely high conversion rate in this process, so I feel comfortable with it. So those are the three reasons we do it. I'm going to do this evaluation, and then I'm going to do my boy Gio, who's the next eval here. Just get the little screen share thing out of the way. Cool. So when the athlete comes in, we're doing kind of an initial interview. I'll always jokingly say, like, we're starting by filling out the top part here. And you guys feel free to take this stuff too. Like, I'll post a blank evaluation form if you want. Nothing is rocket science here. Nothing is rocket science. Nothing is groundbreaking. You're not going to look at these tests and you're not going to be like, wow, I should do that. It's all basic stuff. But what I want to know, I'm addressing these questions to Kayla. Hey, what sports do you play, Kayla? Like soccer, like basketball, martial arts. Great, awesome. What grade are you going into? Are you, going into 5th grade at Chamberlain School? Cool. Do you know anyone who does Parisi? Oh, no. Do you know these kids? And like, I'm already talking about either friends that she may have, or with the mom overhearing it, the friends that she's going to make. Whether it's common interests, other athletes that are kind of in the same 5th grade, 6th grade class as her. And then any injuries, I'll tie in mom. Hey, mom, validate this. Because I'll ask Kayla, hey, do you have any injuries? And she's like, well, I grew a lot. This girl is literally 5'6", and she's 10 years old. She's a monster. She's like, yeah, my knees are achy. I've grown a lot in the last year. Hey, mom, you got anything else? Oh, yeah, sprained LCL from soccer. Okay. That's what happens when you return too fast. And then her goals, she wants more stamina on the field. Okay, so, hey, Kayla, what goals do you have? And she said stamina, awesome. If an athlete doesn't have a goal, I'll say, hey, well, maybe throughout the testing here, we can come up with some goals that you may want to do after you see some of these numbers. It's very important, I think, for the parent to hear us say, what goals do you have, athlete, to the kid? I'm addressing the kid. And then I'll obviously talk to mom and dad probably before this was booked on what their goals for Kayla are. So I know what mom, Jen, I know what her goals are for Kayla, but I don't want mom to tell me what the goals are of her daughter in front of the daughter. I don't want that. I want the daughter to tell me her goals. And I want the mom to see that I'm going through the initial, very surface level goal setting process with their kid. I think that's super valuable, super valuable. So then we go through our warm-up. Takes typically 15, 20-ish minutes. I'll give myself a 20-minute cap. If an athlete can't get through a whole warm-up in 20 minutes, that is a marker that I'm going to make and say, okay, like why couldn't we do it? Is it a coordination issue? Is this a 10-year-old that doesn't know how to skip or squat? If we get through it really fast because an athlete is coordinated and pretty well versed, that's a great check mark as well. So I'm not going to write it on the sheet and say, oh, athlete couldn't finish the warm-up, but I'm going to make a note, for myself and the coaches as the athlete enters the program that, hey, like this person may need some help. We got to really work with this athlete. But it also will affect the recommendation afterwards. So like Josh, specifically, we're talking like evaluation interpretation, like a big piece of this evaluation helps us make that recommendation into what program offering we may have. And I'll kind of cover that as well towards the end. So I'll treat this literally like I'm explaining this to a camera right now, looking at my big sweet blue light glasses, but I will also explain it like I would to mom, Jen, as we go through this. So we do the warm up. We start with a running technique analysis where we're looking at how the athlete runs over a series of 30-yard sprints. Very general. This is a 10-year-old. I'm not, giving her like the most detailed, but what I will say is things that we commonly see, like I'm not going to check that off either. Like, yeah, she's 10. She's probably got general weakness. Like, yeah, weak hips. She's 10, and she's 5'6". Yeah, they're going to look weak. Like, these are things that I'm not necessarily concerned with pointing out, be like, oh, well, you're 10, you're weak. Oh, no. I look at running mechanics, I look at movement mechanics, and things that we coach and teach in our program every day. These are the things that I'm highlighting as she runs. So one, head position. She had her chin tucked in almost like she was looking down, but her chin was literally touching her neck and chest. And that's something that we don't want. You don't want to run looking down. That's not where you want to be. So I'm looking at her vision. Posture, torso position. She was leaning really far forward, which kind of contributes probably to her vision, but I'm just making notes of these. I'm not saying a diagnosis. I'm just making notes on how she runs. Her front side lift wasn't very good. She's typically a pretty short stride. She's a little bit of a lateral whip in her right leg, which is normal for a kicking rotational athlete. So I'm not overly concerned about it. And she contacts the ground flat-footed. And the conversation now when I'm talking to mom or Kayla is, hey, if we want to improve your stamina, we want to improve your running stride to make you more efficient. But at the same time, we're noticing that these positions that We want to get you in these positions that are valuable for you as a soccer player, basketball player, running on a field or down the court. These are things that we do in our session. So I'm not just telling her what she's not good at or inefficient with. I'm saying, hey, these are things that we always see our athletes coming in with, or we see that you're coming in with. And in our programming, whether it's our linear speed programming or even in our strength training program, we're going to get you into these positions so you can start to feel and see what front side lift is. Because I'll say it to you right now and you're like, front side lift, I have no idea what that is, but you're going to learn this. It's no different than when you go to school and you're like, well, I don't know what long division is right now. I'm just putting an example out there. I don't know what long division is right now, but by the end of school, I probably should know. And that's how you become better at school or on sports teams. Like, you don't know the playbook on day one, but that's what you go to practice for. So when you're Parisi, you're going to learn these different pieces that help with your running progression and help with your running movement and cutting, lateral quickness, and strength training, so that you learn it here so you don't have to think about it when you're on the soccer field. And that kind of really spins it in a positive way, which I'm really big on. I'm not here to highlight what you're bad at. That's a really shitty coaching and a really shitty sales job. I'm not here to just say you suck at this, you suck at this. No, hey, here's what we see you doing. It's part of what we're supposed to be doing today. And that helps me as your coach know where we're going to be able to make improvements. And hey, guess what? We do this in our program and here's where we do it. So that way you can just see where the whole kind of training process is taking you. So that's the running technique analysis. Like I said, I'll probably post this evaluation sheet so you guys can just see it. But if we do get a request for video, we'll do it, but I'm not in the business of taking videos of 10-year-olds on my phone or anything like that. It's just listening to that out loud, it sounds really sketchy. So we're not really doing any video unless it's requested. And at that point, if someone does want video, we're charging personal training rates. Very different than the service that you're seeing me describe right now. So little sidebar there for you. From there, we go into our battery of tests. And I will say our Parisi is a little different. We don't have space for a 40-yard dash. So for me, that's the split. I didn't write split, but we have our laser time 10, a laser time 20. I scribble out the 40, and this is going to be the split, the time between the 10 and the 20-yard dash. I really like this number too. I think it's really important. And if you've listened to anything like Mike Boyle talks about, like fly sprints, fly times, this is huge for assessing strength and ground contact time. And as an athlete's improving a transitional stride, huge. Take your split times. Split times are very important, especially like soccer player, you're moving. You're always moving. There's not a lot of dead ball action in soccer. So knowing what that transitional speed number is, huge. A standing vertical. If you're a basketball player, we might do a max. If you ask, we might do a max and giving you approach, and we'll write 2 numbers down, but I'm doing the vertical jump. And then we have a 5-hop broad jump, 5 broad jumps forward for max distance. I'm going to record those. 5, 10, 5. Pro agility, same thing as the NFL and the NBA. I'm going to record those times. We do a 200-yard shuttle with a 20-yard increment. So we put a cone up 20 yards down. It's 5 down and backs to equal 200 yards. And then we do some type of variation of chin-up. So if you can do full chin-ups, beautiful. We're going to do full chin-ups. If you can't do a chin-up, we're going to do a flex arm hang. And if you can't do a flex arm hang, we're going to get a barbell setup or a TRX is what we'll use. And we're going to do a 45-degree row hold. And the key here is, and I'm not sure every Parisi does this, I don't want the last test, because we'll go right down in order, I don't want the last test to be something that you feel like you can't do. The worst thing is when you go to, think about it from us, if we go to any like restaurant or we go to our own like training, we go to a gym and we feel inadequate. I don't want that. I want the athlete to come in. I'm going to know based off of spending 45 minutes with this athlete, hey, can you do a flex arm hang? This is a 5'6", 10-year-old. There was no shot she does a flex arm hang. We're going to crush this row hold. And if she did a row hold for like 45 seconds, yeah, we'll probably try a flex arm hang. But given the fact that she did the row hold for 17, that's probably a good place to stop. So I'll actually even reverse athletes up to the point if I don't think they can do a full chin up, because it can be very dicey if you actually ask the athlete, hey, can you do a chin up? No. Well, can you do a flex arm hang? No. I guess we can do this one. I don't want to do that. I want to almost present it so they check the boxes. Row hold, beautiful. Flex arm hang, beautiful. Chin up, see what we got. Okay, so they kind of work up the ladder, work up the progression, so to speak. And I think that's very important with how you present it to how an athlete feels when they leave your facility. Sorry to sound a little preachy about that, but for me personally in Northern Vermont, and as someone who grew up with really shitty coaches, I want an athlete to leave our facility feeling accomplished and feeling like a super badass. I don't want them to go through and be like, oh, I couldn't do a chin up. Like, you ran a really fast 10 time, but you couldn't do a chin up. Whatever. Some of our Division I athletes can't do chin ups. I'm not, overly worried about your chin up number right now, but you better have some other attributes that we do want to train. Sidebar for a whole other time. Anyway, that's the run through of our battery of tests. So I'm now going to present this to you as if you are a parent, right? And we're doing this. So you're now Jen, whoever's watching this, you're Jen. Cisse is how you say the last name. So Mama Cisse. Here's what we got. So the first test we do is we do a laser time 10-yard sprint. We run these 3 to 4 times. What we're really looking for, if an athlete is progressing through and getting faster, we'll give them some more because we want to see what their peak speed may be. But we're going to do each test more than once, which is what I'm getting at. The point of this evaluation is not to have you just go through it once or twice and say, okay, great, collect data, move on. That's not what we're looking for, because the numbers will tell a story. For me, looking at this as a 10-year-old, what I see with our younger developing athletes is I see some consistency, and then I see a big gap. And what that tells me is twofold. And we can kind of look at this from a straight 10-yard number. This is going to be for your basketball player, like off an inbounds, like that quick burst, or catching the ball at the top of the key and making a drive to the hoop. But for a soccer player, that static 10 isn't something you're necessarily going to see. If you're a goalkeeper, yeah, for sure, it's a big trainable number. But if you're a forward or a midfielder, you're probably moving. So that 10 number, we'll take it for what it is. We want to improve it, but it's not the most important thing for us in terms of your sport position. We look at the 10 or the 20. That's after the 10. We'll collect the 20 right after that. But we look at the split as well. And what's really interesting with Kayla as she runs is you'll see 2.03 seconds, 2.12 seconds, 2.12 seconds. So we're looking at about 9 thousandths of a second difference between the splits on all three. Whereas if we get up to our sprint times, we can see anywhere upward to 0.2 of a second or greater on both the 10 and the 20. So you can see that transitional stride is pretty consistent, but how she gets there isn't. And then how she finishes is impacted by the 10, not impacted by the transition. So I'm going to kind of say that again for learning purposes here. We see the consistency in the split, which is great. That could be just specificity as a soccer player running through a midfield and just the stride that she's used to doing. But getting her to that stride, inconsistent. Typically, if it's anything greater than 5 thousandths of a second, so 0.05, anything greater than that, I would say is a large variance. That's a big variance that we want to take into account for. One of the biggest things that our athletes train for, yes, it's for improvement. That's a no-brainer. But it's consistency in movement that they want. If I'm a basketball player, I want my jump shot to look pretty damn similar attempt from attempt. If I'm an athlete running, it's no different. I want my stride mechanics, my force production to be about as similar as it can get on each contact. So that level of consistency is absolutely something that we want to train. So for Kayla, in this case, we look at the variation between the 10 and the 20, huge. Upwards to 0.2 of a second, if not greater. The split time is within 9 thousandths of a second. So that consistency, we love to see that. But for us in Kayla's training, we do want to improve that initial start and linear speed. We do want to improve that initial push. That's something that's going to help her actually improve on that transitional stride, but also help improve her top end speed ability, which is important as a basketball player covering the length of a court, as well as our soccer players covering a larger surface. So that's what those numbers tell us. Again, it's not necessarily what's good, what's bad. We do have some of those, and I'll touch on those in our jumps, more of our strength-based tests. But for us looking at running stride, a big piece is we want to see these numbers start to get consistent, and we want to see the consistency be in the 10 and the 20, not just in the split times. So for the vertical jump, we see 10.5 inches. We love when athletes can out jump their age. It may not be a lot. You'll see on the next sheet here with Gio, he's got a great vertical relative to his age. But if you think about just out jumping your age, it's something that we use here at our Parisi because it takes into account the age of the athlete, the gender of the athlete, and the size of the athlete for their age. And that's something that I think is really important. If you're a 5, 6, 10-year-old and you can out jump your age, it shows us you have some base level coordination, arm swing, hip drive, and you also have the ability to put some force into the ground relative to your size and strength capabilities for your age. So it might not seem like a lot. Like there definitely is going to be like the 16-year-old kid that hits puberty and can jump 20 inches. Great. But flip that coin and see if it was a 16-year-old that jumped 14 inches. Something in that movement pattern, movement capabilities is limited. And that's something that we can help that athlete and make a big difference. Because if we can help that athlete apply their strength better, they improve. If we can help an athlete learn a new motor pattern, they improve. If we can help an athlete strengthen a motor pattern that they already know, they improve, right? So it's just another variable for us to look at and have a positive conversation with a kid on. So 10.5 inches, awesome, love that. The 5-hop broad jump, that's where we look at the athlete. We love if the athlete can jump their height for 5 times. So if Kayla is, we'll say 5 feet, we'll just do easy math, 5 feet tall for 5 jumps is 25 feet. I just told you she was 5'6", so she's clearly not jumping her height 5 times, but she's jumping her age. So maybe there's a force application issue, maybe because of her limb length, that she's just not comfortable getting into a forward position, a forward lean, which I think is actually probably the answer given how her 10-time numbers were really slow relative to her split. It's something that we look at and can present that cumulative like effect. If we saw a lower 10, like say she was running a 2-second 10, and she had that 2-second-ish split time, and her broad jump was still that low, then it's probably an angle pattern issue, right? I don't have video to like show you what those may be, but we have to kind of derive and actually think deeper when we look at the numbers. Like if you're not jumping your height, why? Is it an angle? Is it a strength issue? I don't know. It's what you're going to have to kind of derive from the athlete. But when I interpret these numbers, one, what I do like is that they're consistent, 21.4, 21.8. So positive, super consistent. I'll say like a negative is we want that to be your height. And that's something we're absolutely going to work on with strength training and through linear speed training, just getting comfortable being in a more forward angle and applying force at a different angle than you're currently applying it for. So it shows how you're going to improve it, one, in strength training and in speed training. So you're going to get benefits in both. But it is something we definitely want to improve on. And it's going to translate to your stride as well, which is really good. What sometimes we will do if we know an athlete has to come in and like for an older athlete for like a football recruiting combine or some type of combine, we'll have them do a 1-hop broad jump, measure that, and then have them do 4 hops and continue on with like the 5-hop score. So that's something that we do take into consideration there as well. Like there's always going to be some bend in this if an athlete needs something specific. 5-10-5 pro agility, same idea. We kind of see like a pretty consistent trend, attempt 1 to attempt 2, 4/1000ths of a second. Then we see a big gap up to 7.28, which is just a shy of 0.2 of a second. So big gap, somewhat consistent. Something happened on the 3rd attempt, but I'm not overly worried about it. Maybe by this point, it could be a conditioning thing. It could be. The 5-10-5 is also the hardest test. It's the most chaotic. 5 yards one way, 10 yards back, another turn, 5 yards back to the middle. So that's actually the test that our athletes will improve on the most because it is the most chaotic and does combine multiple skills from acceleration, lateral plant and turn, deceleration. There's some relative strength involved as well. It's incredibly difficult, but it's my favorite test. It'll tell you a lot about an athlete. We have athletes that run right around 4 seconds. You know, like our best athlete will run somewhere in the 4.0s. We've never had an athlete break 4. If an athlete's breaking 4, they're probably a pro. Like that's just it, or you're just not very good at timing it. That's another thing too. Like our fastest is a 4.04, and that was a Division I soccer player who's like a very trained athlete, been training with the program since he was 10. So he knows the test in and out. He understands step count. He understands everything. He's freakishly strong, but he's also got the skill set that allows him to be a Division I athlete. So anyone who comes in is like, an athlete runs a 3.7, whatever. I'm like, yeah, you're either not good at timing. That's a pro athlete. It's a football player who's been trained for combine testing. But that 5-10-5 number, that's kind of what we look at. And that's how I present it. Because again, day 1, like day 0, like if you're good at these, it's because you've done them before. There's so much skill involved with some of these tests that, it is what it is. But at that same time, like we're not here to be like, yeah, this was good, this was bad. There's definitely the numbers like you saw with the jumps. Like we like to see if we're teaching you a skill-based, coordination-based skill like sprinting, jumping. Yeah, if you have triple extension and triple flexion capabilities, yeah, it makes my life easier. I'm not going to be shy about that. Like if you can coordinate your arms and hips, makes teaching you how to skip and run a lot easier. Like you have some raw materials there, and I like that. So moving on to our 200-yard shuttle, like I said, that's 5 down and backs at a 20-yard clip. That's we get to see you turn, we get to see you run under fatigue. I'm looking at what your running technique looks like 180 yards in versus just 30 yards when you're fresh at the beginning of this assessment. Is there any mechanical changes? I want to know. This is our baseline conditioning test. What I like, and I take this as a recommendation. You'll hear it as well. For an athlete that comes in over 1 minute, I would recommend that they do more strength training than speed training to start. And that's the recommendation for Kayla is to come in 3 times a week. If she comes in 4 times a week, that's great. But I wouldn't do more speed training than strength training to start. And the reasoning is her conditioning just isn't very good. It's just flat out. She needs some GPP work. Our speed training sessions are badass. They are fast. They're, no pun intended, but there's a conditioning element to them. It's safe. Don't get me wrong. We're not just running kids into the ground, but think about it. If you're training change of direction, like it's physically hard. It's an hour of skipping, jumping, cutting. You have water breaks in there, but like it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And like our athletes that wear heart rate monitors will burn upwards to 1,000 calories in an hour because it's an hour of just constant movement. You're teaching movement, right? So there's a lot of repetitions. So I recommend doing more strength than speed training if your 200-yard number is over a minute. If you're a high school or considered an elite athlete and it's over 50 seconds, like I would just tell them like you're gonna feel it the first couple weeks here when you do speed training. Like I just would preface that and say, hey, like as a 200-yard shuttle number improves, your efficiency improves, your conditioning elements and your cardiovascular training will improve. But just to give you an idea, you probably are going to feel the aerobic effects of our speed training, just as you enter the program. I just want you to be aware of that and just be mindful of that with your nutrition and recovery, sleep and stuff before you come into training. That's really it. That's the recommendation there when we interpret it. Yes, we want it to get down. I'll say our high school athletes, like our really good athletes, will run this in sub 40 seconds. Like if you come in and run that sucker in 38 seconds, you're a pretty badass athlete. Like you're probably like some of our best conditioned athletes, as well as just mechanically in and out turns of repeated nature like that. You're a savage. Average for us, like if you can come in and you're right around 45 seconds, pretty normal. If you're over 50, like I said, for an older athlete, temper your expectations of getting your butt kicked in here. Because you're gonna, and then if you're over a minute, like I would want you to do more strength and speed to start just to get some aerobic work, because our strength is pretty quick too, don't get me wrong, and we'll do some locomotion type works like carries and prowler work and things like that. And you're just doing the strength base with keeping your heart rate elevated, like getting some baseline work. If you had a heart rate monitor and you stayed at 60% of your heart rate max for an hour, you're going to build a great aerobic base that's going to help you tolerate the conditioning of our speed training better. So you guys can kind of see like the elements there behind it. And then our roll hold, 16 seconds, that's awesome. Typically when we can see that get to about 30 seconds, then we'll work to a flex arm hang test. If you can flex arm hang for 30 seconds, you're right on the verge of doing a chin up. But like I tell our families, we do a roll hold, we'll do chin up variations, we have band assisted, we have Kaiser machine, we'll do pull downs on. We will get you to do a chin-up variation in every strength session. That is a promise. Yes, we love full chin-ups. That's kind of the top of the pyramid for us. It doesn't mean that our athletes that can do full chin-ups aren't doing isometric rows, right? We do them all, but just to give us a metric to test and go forward, that roll hold is an awesome one, and we do that test in our strength sessions pretty frequently, so you'll be able to accumulate this information and data points going forward. And that's the big piece that I like to finish with when I explain this to athletes, is say, hey, and athletes and parents, like just because you did this today, it doesn't go away. You see on the right side of the sheet here, we've got our post-test data. At any point, we'll definitely schedule a reevaluation, and we can totally do this. Typically, it would be like before your soccer season. We like it to be about eight-ish weeks. 6 would be the bare minimum, but 8 to 12 weeks is great. But we do these tests periodically in our training as well, whether it's laser time sprints and linear speed, 5-10-5s and change of direction, jump measurements in strength training, or even the isometric roll holds in training. That's awesome. We may finish with some 200-yard shuttles periodically. We may do 60-yard shuttles periodically. That's just, we might do those in our training. And as we do, we collect data and information on that. We definitely update parents. Hey, your daughter did the laser time 10s this month and 5 hops this month. Here's some improvement from day one. we definitely want to keep you in the loop on that. So that's Kayla's. I'll give you another variation here. So you can see this is a really good athlete. He's 14-year-old. His dad is the Division II coach here at St. Michael's College, so dad knows everything. Yeah. I remember I'm saying that on this video. This is an 8th grader, right? 14-year-old 8th grader. You can look at these numbers. So this is the kind of the conversation tone with an athlete that comes in and is a good athlete, and dad thinks he's God's gift to earth. This is kind of the explanation I give him there. So, for us, the laser time 10 coming in and being able to run sub 2 pretty consistently. Again, you can see that the gap here is a true 10th of a second, 191 to a 201. And you can see that the second attempt was different, but you can see the similarities in his split time. So again, super consistent here, 0.003 of a second. Love that. You can see here the variation is probably because of his 10 time. So his starts are a little inconsistent. And what is interesting with this is a big time hockey player, baseball player, and lacrosse player. Big time dead ball sport. Baseball, hit, run. Base running the bases, dead ball. Hockey, lots of starts and stop. Lacrosse, lots of starts and stops. So for us, we want this 10 to be consistent as possible. It's awesome you ran a 191, but if this was a 195 or a 192 or a 19, it'd be more impressive because it's that much more consistent. And for us as an athlete at 14, it's probably going to hit a growth spurt tied with puberty. It's something we're definitely monitoring because we have seen, anecdotally speaking, if an athlete of like a growth spurt age comes in with some variation, specifically on the split time, they're probably really fine for a growth spurt because the neurological system's kind of a little wacky. So something could be happening there internally. But the consistency in the split is good because that's that rate of force production. The inconsistency in the 10, it's probably more mechanical, something he needs to learn on and get into. So again, similar explanation with the sprint times. Vertical jump at 18 inches, like I said, we love when athletes can out-jump their age. The fact that he crushed that by jumping 4 inches above means he's got a great level of strength to work with. And I openly tell parents, like, it's a shout out to your kid. Like, it makes our job a lot easier when you come in with that base level coordination and base level strength. It's something that this type of training, it's going to have more of a sticking effect. A 5-hop broad jump, again, you'll see a bigger gap, probably just more of a developed athlete that needed to get stretched out a little bit. Our hockey players do a really good job with the 5-hop. The fact that it's 37 feet, think about it, if it was like 35 feet divided by 5, that's 7 feet a jump. He's not 7 feet tall, so he's jumping well above his height, which is actually, if you guys are familiar with the functional movement screen, the functional movement systems, they have a foundational capacity screen. One of the tests is a broad jump. They like it when athletes can out-jump their height plus 20%. The normal population, like if you were a Gen Pop mom or dad, if you can jump your height, great. If you're an athlete or looking to do athletic endeavors and you can out-jump your height plus 20%, that's just their normative data that they use and their normative metric that they use. For us with young athletes, if you can just out-jump your height, it's an easy barometer, like real easy, where I can look and say, like, if we round down to 35 feet, divide that by 5, that's 7 feet each jump. You're a 5'10" kid. That's a really good ratio. We like that. That shows some really good power. So 5, 10, 5, you'll see, like I put, right is greater than left. That means him planting on his right leg looked more comfortable than his left leg. Just mechanically, something that we teach. That's huge. I can't undersell the mechanics enough. Mechanics translate. Mechanics will translate from sport to training, and that's something that's really important. But the kid came in and ran sub 5 seconds, means he's pretty quick. Whether he's looked good or not, to run a 4.95, 4.82, he's a hockey player, so he's got a little bit of specificity with the turn and the planting and everything like that. Like Parisi, we literally call our turns hockey stops for imagery purposes. So he's got it. That's really good. It doesn't mean it can't improve. Like I said, our normal, like a normal really good number, like if you're really good, is probably in the 4.4s. That's like if you get a 4.45, like you're probably cooking in 5.10.5, and you have a really high level of proficiency. So when I see a 4.82, it's a really good starting point. Mechanically, we want to kind of smooth out the left side. The right side, we want the athlete to be fluent on both sides of their body. That's something that's really important for injury mitigation. I'll never say injury prevention, but strong side, weak side, we want to kind of level that out as much as we can. 200-yard shuttle, you just heard me talk about it with Kayla's. That 41-second 200-yard shuttle is great. Kid's in shape. Kid is ready to go conditioning-wise. He's a 14-year-old, and he's right around that 40-second mark. he's cooking. And my guess is as his turns get better, that number is going to dip below 40, and he's going to be in a really good spot. And then chin-ups, you can see I wrote depth. He probably did a couple extra, but I couldn't count him because he didn't go all the way down to that dead hang position. But 5 chin-ups at 14, that's awesome. It's a great base of strength. It showed throughout this evaluation that he had this baseline relative strength, but to start with 5, that's awesome. That's awesome. This is a really tall, wiry kid too, so he had a long way up. But it's just important to highlight that his base of strength showed throughout all these tests as well. And to come in and do 5, we knew he would do chin-ups, and to do 5 is awesome. And we just track that progress going forward. So that's kind of what the evaluation looks like for a kid that did really well on the evaluation. We're not necessarily like praising high horses, but he's definitely checked some of the boxes we like for athletes when they enter the program. That's how I'll phrase it. And say, like, when athletes enter the program, like if you can jump your age, if you can out jump your height, if you have a great relative base of strength, like you're doing our holds and things like that's really good. For us, it's just about refining technique, and it's no different than a hockey player practicing the skating, a baseball player hitting off a tee, lacrosse players with wall ball, getting shots up if you're a basketball player. Like, you work on these elementary sports skills. Movement mechanics are no different for us. Like, you got to work on your starts, you got to work on your decel, you got to work on your transitional stride. You can always get faster and stronger, and it's going to help and translate over. Like, if you're a hockey player, you can get to more 50-50 pucks. If you're a baseball player and you're faster on the bases, if you're a lacrosse player and you have a better lateral quickness to close space or create space, like every 50-50 opportunity can go your way. That's a huge attribute for you as sports come forward, and that's kind of what these tests will equate to, as far as sports go. So that's kind of how our eval looks and is interpreted. If you guys want to see anything else specific or have any follow-up questions, just let me know. I'm totally happy to jump and create a video here.